Hey everyone, I'm Mike Del Preti, and you're listening to Context, the podcast where we're talking about the real estate industry and what's changing. So today my guest is Leo Pareja, Chief Strategy Officer at eXp Realty. Hey Leo.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Yeah, been a busy couple days, couple weeks.
I would say so.
And after this, you'll be speaking to the class. Are you excited?
Super excited.
That's great. So Leo, how do you typically start your day?
Depends on the day. As long as I'm home, they start about the same time when my 6-year-old kicks in the door and tells me he's ready to go. But normally starts with making the kiddos breakfast, getting them in the car and getting them out to school, and then to the gym and back to the house to put out whatever fire is the highest priority.
Coffee drinker?
Yes, not consistently. It's more the social aspect. I'm a proud Latino, and it's a very big part of our culture, especially in Miami. So normally if I'm out, a café con leche, but if I'm home, I normally just do tea.
Okay. And I heard gym in there. Is exercise a critical component of getting off on the right foot?
Absolutely. It's 3 to 5 days a week.
Fantastic.
Yep.
All right. So for those that are not aware of your background, kind of how'd you get your start in real estate and what's your journey looked like?
I'll give you the 60-second, 120-second version so we can spend more time on what you want to talk about. But I joke that I was born and raised into the industry. I got licensed at 19 years old. I went on to be an agent for 16 years. I sold close to 4,000 homes in that career path. In 2010, I was ranked the #1 Killam's agent in the world. I then started a hard money lending business when the financial crisis happened. One of those moments where hindsight was 2020, and I saw the right pivot. Built it to be one of the largest hard money lending companies in the United States. And then when I was building that business, that was my first foray into building software. Stumbled upon an opportunity, built a product where you and I met called Remine, which became a MLS technology that probably became the fastest growing MLS technology in the history of the space. Exited both those businesses, was hanging out in South Florida, mostly spearfishing, when I got a cold call from a gentleman named Glenn Sanford. And he asked me to be the CTO. I said, no, thank you. I said I could play one on TV, but it doesn't really get me excited. Called me back, said, why don't you come hang out with me for a day? Decided we got along really well. I joined as the president of the affiliated companies because we have a portfolio of companies. And about 6 months in, he called me and said he read about this title that he liked. And that became my title 6 months later. And that's how I got here.
Awesome. And, if any listeners have been living under a rock, eXp Realty, what's kind of the high-level numbers there?
The original, many imitators, but the original cloud-based brokerage. We are scaled in 24 countries, all 50 states. Single largest independent brokerage in the world.
How many agents?
Just shy of 90,000.
And #1 brokerage in the U.S. based on agent count?
Agent count and transaction count for 2 years running.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, considering those numbers were zero like 13, 14 years ago.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So if you could kind of give yourself some advice back when you started and entered the industry, what would you want to tell your younger self?
I get asked that question a ton of times, especially, I'm sure it'll come up after this in the class. And I started as a college student, so it's very pertinent. But it's almost the advice I give anybody trying to learn anything, which is to compress time, right? Time is the only commodity that evens the playing field as human beings. It's a finite game we're playing. So if you want to learn anything, whether it's real estate or spearfishing, which I just took up moving to South Florida, I like to compress time. And the way I suggest people do it in real estate is if you're a young person or even your second, third career, I would identify the person in the market that you most want to emulate. Having walked a mile in the shoes now, I would also not only do it the professional side, but also really interview and understand who they are personally. Because I'll give you an example. There's a young man who walked into my office once upon a time and said, hey, early 20s, I've interviewed 3 brokers, and when I told them what I want to do, they all kind of cracked a smile and said, you want to become Leo Pareja. And so after the third person said it to me, I just looked you up, and he showed up at my office cold and said, everyone says that I'm describing your career path, so I figured I'd just come knock on your door.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He was super upfront about it. He said, I don't want to be here very long. And we made a commitment, and I was able to put a couple hundred transactions in his name in the first couple of years because I had an institutional client who needed high volume servicing. He was a 30 under 30 within 3 years of being with me. And now he's got a great solo practice. But the reality is if you can create something, an experience where you can touch what it normally takes a career in a couple of years. To quote Dave Ramsey, live like nobody else so then you can live like nobody else is the best advice I have for people.
What's one way you've compressed time in the past year?
Ooh, that's a good one. The way I've been compressing time, especially since, I've gotten to have resources, is I pay to compress time. So the best examples in business is like, I want to explore something. I can compress time by writing a check. And I'll give you actually an example, not in the last year, but I'll come back to that, like 10 years ago. I was considering going into the probate business as a real estate agent. And I found the best agent in the country that did it. And I called him and I said, hey, I want you to tell me how you do it. He said, sure, wire me $7,500. And I did. And I got on a plane, went to San Francisco, spent a day with him. And what I got out of that on the plane ride home is I didn't want to do it. It did not kind of match my DNA. And I think that $7,500 was the best compression of time I could have had. Because if I would have just tried it, like most human beings do everything, they would, I would have spent 6 months a year, which time is my most valuable commodity. And I would have then realized I didn't like how it felt. I didn't like the scripts. I didn't like the emotions that came with going after that business. And so I look at time compression anytime you hire an expert I work out with a personal trainer. It's those little things where I could probably get a more impactful workout in 30 minutes with a trainer than I can by myself for an hour.
Yeah. No, it's a good answer. I mean, you traded $7,500 for a year. That seems like a pretty good bargain when you look at it that way.
And it fascinates me, especially for practitioners who sell real estate, who are like, I'm going to try social. And they just start spending money on Facebook. They start clicking around. It's like, I'd rather pay a professional and when I pay for experience or time compression, however we want to call it, I actually want to know the stuff that did not work. Right? I want the 100 things that failed, so I don't do that. And then get the ones that do. But having the list of the things that didn't work is almost as important to me as the ones that worked.
Right. Save yourself time and money.
Yeah.
All right. So why is the real estate industry so slow to change?
That's a great question. And that's the part that I think, I've been in the business 22 years now. And since I got licensed, people have been telling me how the real estate agent was going to go away. And I always answer in the same way. Highly infrequent, highly emotional, and very expensive. Single largest asset the average American family owns. On average, you do it 3 times, right? It's your starter home, your family home, and then your downsized home. And so I grew up selling in the DC metropolitan area, and I sold homes to super intelligent government leaders, sophisticated private equity people, and everyone, including myself, we turn into an emotional putty during the home purchase process. Because residential real estate differs from every asset that exists on earth because of its utility, right? Stock, bonds, commercial real estate, they have a dividend yield, if you will. Residential real estate is a storage of human beings, right? And unlike anything else, it is truly necessary. And the second, all the family creation, all that stuff is tied to it. But it's also completely driven by human condition. So as I say to people, you're no exception. You never woke up and said, hey, rates are 2.85%. It's a great day to buy. It's like your wife's pregnant. We need another bedroom. You did it again. Your kids got big. They moved out. Death, divorce, and a couple promotions along the way dictate everything. And housing is, in my humble opinion, less complicated than people think. It's a formula of supply, household formation, and interest rates for affordability. So people decide they need to move because of human condition. Depending on rates, they may buy or rent, and then they move. So if you look over a 30-year period, most recent history, the low watermark is 4 million transactions. The high watermark is 7 million transactions, including new construction. And so the amount of transactions is a finite game. And the friction and the complexity is what keeps it so slow moving, right? There's like 50 vendors that touch the average transaction. Title insurance is a whole other conversation that exists in this country. And so I think the infrequency and the dollars at risk always make everyone, have pause. And, I'm sure we'll get to it, the NAR settlement that just happened. I still wholeheartedly believe people will choose an expert to guide them.
All right, so let's talk about the NAR stuff for a minute. What do you think is the number one thing people are getting wrong in this whole situation?
So I would say it depends which group is getting it all wrong, because I'm feeling like all groups are significantly wrong. So the first one is the biggest group would be the mainstream media and how they're basically making clickbait headlines, which is the 6% commission is going away. There's no more commission. That's factually incorrect. First of all, there is no 6% commission. They've always been 100% negotiable. If you look at averages, and I always like to averages, the last couple of years have been 5%. And the commission averages go up and down based on the inventory and availability. If you go post-crisis in like 2009, 2010, 11, when properties were sitting on the market for 6, 7, 18 months, buy-side commission went up, right? So it is a marketing demand gen lead function to attract attention. And so what happened is that the offer of unilateral compensation is now deleted, right? So for 30 years or so, the listing agent takes the full commission and splits it. And prior to that, we had what was called sub-agency, where the listing agent still took a larger commission and split it, and the representation went strictly to the seller. So even though there was a agent acting behaviorally very much like buyer agency, it was still seller agency. And the ironic part that I think most people are unaware of is the DOJ had an objection to it. And so what's happened now is it's a full decoupling. The offer of unilateral compensation is being deleted out of the MLS. And what's replacing it, in just about every MLS coming near you, is the seller's offer of concession. And so the huge, huge distinction, the number one thing if a real estate agent's listening, is that it's no longer unilateral. So pre-Friday, March 15th, if there was an advertised percentage, and this is probably the important part, like let's say a house is listed for $500,000, there was a 3% co-op. It didn't matter if we wrote a contract or ended up selling the house for $400, $450, $350. That 3% was 100% tied to it, and the agent could even take the other agent to arbitration at the board to make sure the compensation was there. That was an offer of compensation. So now, same example, $500,000, seller offers a $15,000 concession, advertised. If the agent does not put it into the contract going forward, there is no offer. There's no offer of compensation. So think of it as like a flooring credit. Right now, and for the last, how many years the MLSs have existed, I could advertise a credit. So, let's say the dog tore up the bedroom in the back and you don't want to change the carpet because you're not sure what the buyer's taste is going to be. Mm-hmm. They're going to say $5,000 credit. If I forgot to write it into the contract, that's on me. That's on the buyer. I always joke with agents, especially new agents. I feel like it's a rite of passage in real estate that you buy your first washer and dryer because you forgot to check a box of the conveyable personal property versus the fixtures. And so that's what commission is going to be like.
All right. So that's one group who's kind of getting it wrong, mainstream media. What else are people getting wrong?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I keep hearing is that buyer agents are going away. I fundamentally believe that will not be the case. I think there's going to be a period of experimentation where creative entrepreneurs try different models like flat fee, hourly, percentage-based, will still survive. I think if you look, again, I'm very pragmatic and you and I have known each other a long time, and I always say data sets you free, right? If you look at every segment of commerce, there tends to be multiple models, right? So there could be a high-volume commoditized model, and then there could be a high-end, high-value experience.
We've had these different models
100%.
The whole time. So is anything going to change? Do you see more adoption?
So what I'm actually telling my agents, and I'm going to probably make a T-shirt out of it, and I'm going to say, treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. And that's probably the best way to demystify it, right? We're already trained and have behavior that is going to be what shows up, right? So there's not a single realtor in America right now that would take a listing without a signed agreement. I would say, especially in this low inventory environment we're experiencing, sellers are interviewing multiple listing agents who are pitching fiercely their value proposition, and for this fee, you will get this value, right? And that goes up and down the value chain of commodity versus high USP. So that's exactly what I think is going to happen, right? So, most states, and there's a lot of people who message me and they're like, well, my state requires this document. Most states that have requirements are agency disclosures versus an employment disclosure, which is the buyer broker representation agreement. And so now everybody's got to get really good at it.
Given all this, what do you think the successful agent of the future looks like?
So again, pragmatic, right? I got licensed in 2002. The number one agent in the world that year was probably doing 200 transactions, right? The year I was number one in Keller Williams, I was also number 5 on the Real Trends list. So like top 5 in the country. I sold 603 units. I guarantee you when the Real Trends list comes out this year, number 5 will be an order of magnitude bigger than that. And so what I've seen is that technology compresses and accelerates. And I don't know if we're going to talk about AI and all that stuff, but I feel like these shifts allow the rise of the super team. I've been talking about that for 10 years as well. And so we see what's old is new is a trend. I think the mega team becomes the team ridge, and companies like ours are just this platform that supports whatever size entrepreneurial dream you want to build. I have teams that are multi-market. I'm talking about like 20 markets, right? With, 50, 60, 70, 100 team members. And so I see that continuing to happen, right? And this NAR curveball could make that accelerated.
You mentioned technology. What kind of technology do you think the industry needs right now?
That's a good one. We're probably going to, I've had a bunch of tech calls this week as to what holes we may have in our processes. But, there's probably going to be a lot of proliferation with even collecting fees. People are saying flat fee or hourly rates. Like, well, the broker's the only one who's allowed to collect that per state real estate rules. Is that dispersed at time of service rendered, or is that at closing, like 100% of real estate transactions? There's going to be an a la carte process that is more standard in the listing side, right? There's companies that will list your house a la carte. We just don't have that on the buy side yet. And then there's the unintended consequences that we're not aware of, right? So, there's those companies that'll show a property for a fee. They've been around for a while. Maybe that scales faster than in a previous model.
I mean, there's been so much change in the industry. Even before last Friday, March 15th, things have been pretty dynamic and changing quite a bit. And now post that, things are changing quite a bit. If you look at the industry, are there winners and losers?
100%. I think anytime there's a shift, I think EXP has proven that the cloud model is the way of the future, right? All the growth in all your reports shows that the nimble, cloud-based, still full service as I see it, right? There's a difference between limited service and full service and like an uncapped model and a capped model. But I just think like COVID accelerated what have probably taken 10 years. And I don't think it's limited to just us, right? I think greater, the commercial real estate debacle that's ahead of us is going to be epic. Just because I think all of us, we overcomplicate things and even sample size, right? People say, well, what's going to happen? I'm like, well, what's your behavior like? How do you feel about working from home versus going to an office from 9 to 5 ever again? Right? Like, there's not a version of reality where I would go to an office 9 to 5 because of what you just asked me when you opened. I actually get to see my kids every morning now. And I pick them up from school most days, right? The house is 3 blocks from the school. Most people know that if you schedule a call with me at 3:30, it's going to be while I'm walking. There's no amount of money on earth to take that back away from me. Like the genie's out of the bottle. And so how is our industry different than others? And, there was a lot of people that said the cloud brokers wasn't going to work, but here we are.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were going to start a seed venture fund in the industry right now, what kind of companies would you want to invest in?
Oh, that's a really good one. With my experience in raising capital and seeing a lot of tech companies, for anyone listening in the tech real estate startup world, there's this giant fallacy that, if I have the microphone, I talk about it because the numbers in our industry are so big. They're about to shift dramatically, but let's just go with last year's numbers, $100 billion in commissions paid, 1.6 million practitioners. That sounds like a huge TAM, but most people aren't familiar with the disparity in those numbers. 57% of people sold 0 homes last year. right? I say a good portion of real estate agents have a hope certificate, not a real estate license, right? They hope someone bumps into them and allows them to sell them some real estate. But the concentration and distribution it's the Pareto's law and at an exaggerated split. So, when people are starting SaaS products for the real estate industry, they grossly underestimate the total addressable market. And then anytime you're doing seed venture or growth or venture, there's a formula. It starts at total addressable market, CAC, customer acquisition cost, to then lifetime value, right? And if the CAC is at least 4x smaller than the LTV, you got a product. But unfortunately, in real estate, you have this endemic churn that exists in the industry because, for good or bad, I'm not here to point fingers at what has happened and not happened in the industry, but it's a super aspirational business with a super high churn rate, right? Like 66% of the agents don't make year one. By year 5, 90% of the people that started quit. And so it doesn't matter how good your product is. Doesn't matter how good your service is. You can expect like baseline 5 to 6% churn on a month-over-month basis on your population, which translates in most, and that's the other huge for any tech founder listening. A realtor is not an enterprise sale. It is an SMB sale. And most people coming into our space treat it and act like it's enterprise. The consumer acquisition cost is D2C, and the churn rate is higher than D2C.
But what kind of companies would you invest in? What kind of problems would they need to be solving for you to write a check?
So, and again, it also depends as to where I sit in the world. The ones I get excited about and the ones I have written checks for recently as a corporate entity are the ones that touch the unsexy stuff. Right? It's like healthcare, right? Because our population doesn't have access to it. And it's super necessary. The sign company.
Yeah.
Like who we order signs and business cards from. The home warranty company. The commission advance company. Like that stuff is probably the essentials. So this is how I'll sum it up to any tech entrepreneur coming into the real estate industry. There's a fallacy in our world, and again, this probably goes to everything because I see it like rampant in society, is humans, especially right now, will pay for painkillers versus take the vitamins. Like across the board, I think if we were to do a poll, every single American knows how to be healthy. Full stop. You need to consume less calories than you burn. There's multiple ways to do that. You could eat less and not work out, or eat as much as you want and just burn more calories than you need. And so Ozempic comes out and like, I don't know, 8-9% of the population's on it because it's an easy button. So what I see work in real estate are the things where it's like leads, convert transactions, right? So, but again, you still have all the churn numbers. So I get excited and invest in the stuff that scales and is not sexy and can be embedded into the process. So that's probably the better answer for you.
Okay.
What could be embedded into my workflow where people just go, oh, okay, right? Like I obsess with the portion of the transaction flow where if I put the right call to action meeting a button inside of our workflow, 60, 70, 80% of the people are just going to click it.
So you mentioned a lot of different things, and EXP is a large organization with a good amount of resources. In the reports and research that I do, it's constantly at the top of profitable or least unprofitable businesses in the whole ecosystem, right? How do you think about focus? Like, how do you think about what EXP does versus what you're going to get a partner to do?
No, that's a great question. And, with my title, I think it's a little ambiguous to people what I do. And I actually have summed it up into a sentence, which is my job is to make being at EXP better than not being at EXP. And so since I've gotten there, my obsession has been with operational excellence. Right? You're probably one of the only people who listen to our earnings calls that's, a close friend of mine. And I said last year was the year of operational excellence. We have a lot of cool things and we get looked at as a tech company, but at the end of the day, I have no confusion that we are a real estate company, right? Like my whole goal is to onboard you as soon as possible, pay you as fast as possible. And the part we haven't talked about, which is super interesting at scale, is serving the multiple avatars that I serve.
What do you mean by that?
So I have a super team that does $1 billion in production who, these people are brilliant business minds. And then I have your kind of statistically average agent, age-wise, production-wise and education-wise. So one of the things that I obsess with in operational excellence is meeting agents where they want to be met. So you can come into our virtual world, but you can also call us on a phone number. You can also chat us. You can text us. We can meet you wherever you're at. And even simple things like making sure that everyone in support is empowered to close a ticket, right? What pisses you off as a consumer when you call someone and you get passed around 6 times, right? Like how much time are you in the automated conversation before you get to talk to a human being? And again, whether it's building a product, I always encourage entrepreneurs to say, what pisses you off about an experience? Make sure you don't do that.
All right. So if you could kind of be the CEO of any other company in the real estate ecosystem, what company would you want to have a crack at?
Well, after my last exit, I had lots of different opportunities, and I had almost made the decision that I was out of organized real estate. Building Remind was probably the hardest thing I've done mentally, physically, emotionally.
What brought you back?
The opportunity that I saw as EXP. There's a lot of our competitors who are excited and say we're the new shiny object, and there's so much opportunity. I have always given a lot of my credit to time and luck, right? Like I love, we were talking about this earlier when we were having a coffee. Like Outliers is one of my favorite books. And I remember reading it when I was really young and it actually pissing me off because I thought I was the reason why I've succeeded throughout my journey through working hard and like all the things that we earn, to get to an achievement. But so much of life to me is being at the right place at the right time. With that said, you have to be extremely qualified and do all that hard work stuff. Like that to me is like the price of admission, but you have to be at the right place at the right time. Glenn Sanford decided to do a virtual company 13 years ago when everyone thought it was ridiculous, right? And he slowly scaled it to all 50 states. And he put in all the infrastructure. He did all the work that, people all of a sudden call you an overnight success for. And then COVID hit, like right place, right time. So to that, the reason I said yes and the reason I'm super excited in this moment in history is because we're fully scaled. We have real cash on our balance sheet. We have absolutely no debt. And unlike any of the new generation, because the old legacy ones are a whole different problem, and I don't even think about them. But the new ones, not one of them has real actual net income, right? You and I debate this all the time because people love to talk about adjusted EBITDA, and that presentation I've seen you do with the wilted spinach is the best one. Like losing 5 cents an apple and doing volume is not the solution, right? We've seen companies had 100% growth year over year in revenue, but their SG&A grew at the exact same speed. So what happens is as you scale, you're going to implode or you're going to substantially pivot and change your value proposition. So genuinely, I had the opportunity to go helm some other companies after my last exit. And this is the one I chose because I truly think we're a battleship, best in class, ready to go.
Yeah. And I might add, battleship, I get that analogy in terms of size, but you're an agile battleship, right? You have the resources and you're able to pivot. Okay, well, that's kind of it. Any closing thoughts you want to share?
Especially for the entrepreneurs out there, I've had a pretty cool career, and I get asked, how did you decide to do that? And you're never qualified for anything you're about to do, right? And especially for the people who have young kids, right? Like the second they handed me that child, and I'm like, okay, like, what do I do now? They're like, what do you mean you be a parent? Like, I have no idea how to be a parent, right? I was never qualified at 19 years old to sell you a house. I wasn't qualified to be in the rooms where I got to be in my 20s, thanks to opportunities like NAREP. But like during the financial crisis, I was in the White House as they were crafting CFPB and Dodd-Frank. I wasn't qualified to raise $48 million and build a tech company. I can't write a single line of code, and I was just a realtor. And then, I wasn't qualified, in my opinion, to run a publicly traded company, but here I am, and I get to do the earnings calls and debate EBITDA with analysts.
Fantastic. All right, Leo. Well, thanks for joining today. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to your chat with my class afterwards. So I'm Mike Del Prete. You've been listening to Context. If you want to jump into more podcasts or more of my research, you can check my website, mikedp.com, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.